or very hard. In just 16 months, you have fired more than a dozen senior military leaders. You've delayed or canceled the promotion of even more. Your chief of staff told the Secretary of the Army that President Trump would not want to stand.
That's not true. That was totally false reporting.
I'm not getting to my
you know
question yet, Mr. Secretary.
What happens when military promotions become the center of a political firestorm? During this explosive House hearing, Congressman Derek Tran confronted Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over allegations that 2 black officers and 2 female officers were removed from a promotion list despite their exemplary service. Hegseth admitted the names were removed, but his explanation only fueled more questions.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Thank you, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Mr. Hurst, for being here today. You know, after I was honorably discharged from the Army Reserve, the GI Bill helped me go to school and ultimately become a lawyer. My focus was representing clients who were wrongfully terminated or faced discrimination and harassment at the work. Mr. Secretary, if I were in the courtroom trying to prove that you discriminate against our military heroes, I wouldn't have to look very far or very hard. In just 16 months, you have fired more than a dozen senior military leaders. You've delayed or canceled the promotion of even more. Your chief of staff told the Secretary of the Army that President Trump would not want to stand.
That's not true. That was totally false reporting.
I'm not getting to my
you know
question yet, Mr. Secretary. Yeah, you told the president, the Secretary of the Army that the president would not want to stand next to a black female officer at the military events. But, you know, despite all of this, I remain very hopeful that you can and will do better for the men and women who have dedicated their lives to protect our great country. You're here to ask for $1.5 trillion. That's a huge budget, and I want to make sure that you have the ability to manage it. Secretary Hegseth, you would agree with me when I say that we want the most qualified people in every position of our military, correct? That's a question.
Yes.
Thank you. General Kane, you would want the same?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I share the bipartisan concern about the firing of General George. And what I and the American people want to know from you is, did you ask the president for his permission before you fired General George, Secretary Hegseth?
It is my responsibility to confer with the Commander-in-Chief on especially high-level personnel matters. And ultimately, I won't relay what was discussed, but he was aware of the action that would be taken.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And when you made the decision to fire General George, did you consult Secretary Driscoll?
There had been multiple consultations over a year, yes.
Do you and Secretary Driscoll have a good working relationship?
Yes, I appreciate the work he's doing for the Army.
And for the record, would you agree that Secretary Driscoll is doing a great job as the Secretary of the Army?
I appreciate the work that the Secretary is doing and made the personnel change based on the Chief of the Army.
In fact, he was so good that at his job that the president sent him to Ukraine to negotiate a peace deal. Do you know why the president chose to send him over you?
I'm grateful that the president puts in players at key moments to advance policy priorities, and that's what occurred there, and I was very supportive of it at the time.
Recently, Secretary Driscoll testified in front of the Appropriations Committee that he refused to strike the names of 2 female and 2 black officers from a promotion list due to their exemplary service, names which were ultimately removed. Did you order him to strike those names?
I know we removed those names. I did.
Okay. Why?
Because we review every general officer. You mentioned 12 general officers have been reviewed. The number's much higher than that. I would also note that under Barack Obama, 197 general officers were removed. So this is not something specific to this administration. Every officer serves at the pleasure of the president. And when they need to be removed in order to ensure we have the right leadership in those services, I will make those calls regardless of what you might say from the dais.
You know, about a year ago, the Army began their transformation initiative. I'm all for modernization, but this process seems to have been completely rushed in a way that compromises our readiness, including deactivating a medical evacuation Black Hawk unit at Joint Training Forces Base, Los Alamitos. I've heard recently from senior Army officials who support slowing down the Army Transformation Initiative, specifically as it relates to aviation. Secretary Hegseth, can you commit to slowing down ATI as it relates to aviation?
There are multiple places inside ATI that we are reviewing to ensure that we do not create capability gaps inside today's Army based on the fights we have today and the fights of the future. And this budget reflects ensuring that we don't have any operational gaps in the Army or any of the services.
Mr. Secretary, during your opening, you brought up this beautiful slide, and you talked about the Arsenal of Freedom. It's the Arsenal of Freedom slide, talking about private investment, from the $1.5 billion. RTX was on there, Boeing, GE, L3 Harris, Lockheed. My question to you is, do you or your wife have any personal investment in those companies?
No.
One of the most consequential exchanges during this congressional hearing came when Congressman Derek Tran questioned Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth about military leadership, promotion decisions, and whether politics is influencing who rises through the ranks of America's armed forces. Tran, an Army Reserve veteran, opened on a personal note, explaining how the GI Bill helped him attend school after his military service and eventually become a lawyer representing workers who faced discrimination and wrongful termination. That background framed the concerns he brought before the committee. He argued that recent personnel decisions inside the Department of Defense have raised serious questions about fairness and equal opportunity within the military. According to Tran, more than a dozen senior military leaders have been dismissed or had promotions delayed during Hegseth's tenure, creating concern among lawmakers about whether qualified officers are being treated impartially. The hearing became especially tense when Tran referenced reports claiming that Hegseth's chief of staff told the Secretary of the Army that President Trump would not want to stand next to a black female officer during military events. Hegseth immediately rejected that allegation as false before Tran could finish the question, dismissing the report outright. Tran then shifted to a series of direct questions about General George's dismissal. Hegseth confirmed that President Trump had been informed before the removal, although he declined to discuss the private conversations that led to the decision. He also confirmed that he had consulted Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll and praised Driscoll's work. The most contentious moment came when Tran cited testimony from Driscoll stating that he had refused to remove 2 female officers and 2 black officers from a promotion list because of their outstanding records. Tran asked Hegseth directly whether he had ordered those names to be removed. Hegseth answered plainly, "I know we removed those names. I did." He defended the decision by arguing that every general officer is reviewed individually and serves at the pleasure of the president. To support his position, Hegseth pointed to previous administrations, noting that hundreds of general officers had also been removed under President Barack Obama, arguing that reviewing military leadership is not unique to the current administration. For Tran, however, the concern was not simply that officers were reviewed, but whether highly qualified officers were excluded for reasons unrelated to merit. His questions reflected broader democratic concerns that diversity initiatives and personnel decisions are being reversed in ways that could undermine confidence throughout the military. Tran also questioned Hegseth about the Army Transformation Initiative, warning that rapid restructuring, particularly involving Army aviation units, could weaken military readiness. He urged the Defense Department to slow parts of the process to avoid creating capability gaps. Hegseth responded that the Pentagon is reviewing the initiative to ensure operational readiness is maintained while modernizing the force. The hearing concluded with questions about possible financial conflicts of interest. After displaying a slide highlighting major defense contractors involved in the administration's Arsenal of Freedom initiative, Tran asked whether Hegseth or his wife owned investments in any of the companies listed, including RTX, Boeing, GE Aerospace, L3 Harris, and Lockheed Martin. Hegseth answered simply, no. Although the exchange ended without resolving the underlying dispute, it highlighted a growing debate over the future of military leadership. Democrats argued that transparency, equal opportunity, and merit-based promotions must remain at the heart of the armed forces, while Hegseth maintained that leadership reviews are a normal responsibility of the Secretary of Defense and are essential to ensuring the military has the leadership needed to meet future challenges. As Congress continues its oversight of the Pentagon, questions about military promotions, leadership decisions, and political influence are likely to remain a central focus.